the palm branches, royalty. Today, King Jesus marches into Jerusalem. And that's a lot more than simply oh, well, isn't that pleasant? The kingdom of God is confronting the powers of this world. The kingdom of God is confronting Caesar and Pilate and the religious institution of Jerusalem. And it's joyous because we know what the outcome will be. It's always sort of a strange Sunday that we have here because we say it's Palm Sunday, and it is, and it's joyous, and it should be happy. And look at the children celebrating with us. But we also say that this is a Passion Sunday because after King Jesus rides into Jerusalem, well, the passion, the suffering actually starts because with each progressive day, he is going to come closer and closer to the cross. Until, well, today we anticipate what's going to be happening Friday. As a matter of fact, all throughout Lent, we have been looking at the cross, the final words of Jesus. And today, we hear his final words, and this is going to set the tone for the rest of this service. After you hear these words, we appropriately are going to respond by moving into a somber reverence of his giving his life for us on the cross. Hear now the final words from the cross.
When Jesus had received the wine, he said, "It is finished." Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m, while the sun's light failed and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Having said this, he breathed his last. When the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God and said, "Certainly, this man was innocent."
Now, we have talked about how the cross saves us. In the very first saying uttered by Jesus on the cross, he said, "Father, forgive them." And when he said that, he was saying that for us. For we all have put Jesus on the cross. The cross is that rich symbol of God's love. Reverend Adam Hamilton, whose book Final Words we've been using as a devotional guide and study guide, did his own reflection on the cross. And he had these words to say. Listen carefully.
I came to realize that the cross is not math or science. It is poetry lived out in human flesh. The cross is a divine drama in which God, through Jesus, is revealing the darkness of the human soul and the relentless grace and love of God for the human race. It is a sculpture that, when seen from one angle, is so terrible and repulsive, you can hardly stand to look at it. But when viewed from another angle, is so beautiful, you cannot help falling to your knees in utter amazement. It is a masterpiece in which the artist has painted at one and the same time a self-portrait of you, your need for mercy, and his willingness to offer it to you. It is a love story that moves you to tears, one that begs to be read again and again.
Adam calls it a sculpture. When I read his words, I thought of a painting. As a matter of fact, more specifically, I thought of a series of paintings that adorn the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Rome. Michelangelo painted over 5,000 square feet of these images from different biblical accounts. It took him 4 years of literally back-breaking work to finish that masterpiece. Think of the agony that he went through, lying on his back, working with his assistants, taking mistakes and covering them over, until finally, after having given everything he had into this Sistine Chapel, he made the last brushstroke. He put it back down, he looked at his masterpiece and he said, "It's finished." And you know that Michelangelo knew that for centuries to come, that would be something that would stand the test of time in terms of beauty and its breathtaking mystery. And Jesus, hanging on the cross for those hours, looks back. I have to think that he looks back and he remembers. He remembers the 3 years that he has invested in this ministry. He remembers the faces of Peter and James and John and Mary and Martha and Joanna. He sees the joy in their faces as they followed him. He remembers the face of one of the little boys who gave the bread and the fish to him, his lunch, and remembers the awe in the boy's face as Jesus multiplied that and fed thousands with it. He remembers that mother whose face was contorted in grief, and then how it suddenly sprang in disbelieving joy when Jesus raised her son back to life. He remembers from the cross the faces of the multitude listening in rapt attention to him as he preaches the Sermon on the Mount. These and a million other scenes must have gone through Jesus' mind as he hung there on that cross. Such was his masterpiece. Such was what he devoted himself. And finally, as his life was ebbing away and the last scene made its journey through his mind, he looked out, and like Michelangelo putting down the brush, he said, "It is finished. It is complete." From now on, he committed that masterpiece, his work for 3 years, into the hands of the one who had commissioned him to do it. Did you catch the note that Luke had in his description? He said that after Jesus said that, the curtain of the temple was torn from top to bottom. Now what that means is this. In the temple, there was a central part called the Holy of Holies. Originally, that's where the Ark of the Covenant was, and it was concealed from everybody else with this thick curtain, one fabric made of fabric that was colored with purple and red and blue, color of royalty. No one was to go into the Holy of Holies except the high priest, and then only at certain times of the year. But when Jesus finished his masterpiece, then the curtain was ripped from heaven down to earth. And now there would be nothing separating us from the love of God. There would be nothing that would separate us from the relentless love of God to us. So great is God's love for us that through the cross, he reaches out to us to bring us back as a cherished son, a cherished daughter. And all now who would witness that wondrous love of the cross now would have the power to be changed and brought back into that nurturing love of the God who held not even his son from us.
What wondrous love is this, O my soul, O my soul? What wondrous love is this, O my soul? What wondrous love is this that caused the Lord of bliss to bear the dreadful curse for my soul? What wondrous love is this, O my soul, O O my soul. What wondrous love is this, O my soul? What wondrous love is this that caused the Lord of life to lay aside his crown for my soul, for my soul, to lay aside his crown for my soul. To God and to the Lamb I will sing, I will sing. To God and to the Lamb I will sing. To God and to the Lamb, who is the great I am, while millions join the theme, I will sing, I will sing. While millions join the theme, I will sing.
And after Jesus said, "It is finished," his final words were, "Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit." Many people think that was a prayer that Jewish mothers taught their kids to repeat right at bedtime. It was taken from the 31st Psalm, and just as Jesus had started his final words by quoting Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me?" So does he end now with a prayer to God. And that Psalm 31 ends this way: "You are indeed my rock and my fortress. For your name's sake, lead me and guide me. Take me out of the net that is hidden for me. For you are my refuge. Into your hand I commit my spirit. You have redeemed me, O Lord, faithful God." So from now on, it would be up to God. Jesus has completed his work, and it would be up to God to redeem the cross in the light of the resurrection. And for all of us who dare look at that cross from the light of the love of the Father, for all of us who will look at that cross with tears of gratitude and of awe and amazement, God still works. God still gives you that opportunity to have a new life, a changed life, and to have that intimate relationship that was meant for you with the one who, as we said, withheld not even his own son. The cross changes lives. And you know, it even changed a life that very first day. Even as Jesus hung on the cross, one man's life was changed. Remember the Roman soldier?
It was a job for angry men, men who'd been abused as boys, and those who were adept at compartmentalizing their work into the dark recesses of their mind when they came to the end of the day. We would brutalize men, drive spikes into their hands and feet, gamble for their final earthly possessions, and watch them die. Then we would go home and have supper with our wives and children. It was about 8:30 in the morning when we led Jesus and the others to Calvary that day. I knew of Jesus. A friend stationed in Galilee told me how he had gone to Jesus and asked him to heal his servant. Jesus never even touched the servant. He merely spoke a word, and the man was made well. My friend was convinced it was a miracle. My friend told me that Jesus was not like the typical would-be messiahs. He wasn't raising up an army to drive us out of the country. He taught the people to love their enemies, to pray for those who harassed them, and to turn the other cheek when struck. I told my friend we could use a few more like him in Judea. Yet here he was, being marched to the skull, the place of crucifixion, after having been beaten and bloodied by men. As I looked at him, naked, the crown of thorns upon his brow, for the first time in a long time, I felt a deep regret for what I was about to command my men to do. Yet this was my job, and he was just a Jew. Pushing back any semblance of compassion from the recesses of my mind, I gave the order for them to nail him to the tree. I watched him throughout the day, listening as he spoke. He took the abuse hurled at him with dignity and strength. It was as if he, with his crown of thorns, really was a king, and we were his rebellious subjects, whose rebellion would soon be put to an end. Yet far from calling for our destruction, this king pled for our mercy. Remarkable. Remarkable. I watched as dark clouds rolled in at noon. An eerie feeling lingered for 3 hours. It was as if the heavens themselves were proclaiming the darkness of the deeds we were witnessing. Something felt dreadfully wrong. Then a small earthquake shook the ground. Some people fled in fear, terrified that this might be a sign from God. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out, "I thirst!" One of the religious leaders surprised me by breaking away from his colleagues and giving Jesus a drink. Then Jesus said, "It is finished." But a strange thing to say as he approached his death. This was a cry of victory, a man successfully completing a mission. Just before he breathed his last, he gathered his strength, pulled himself up by the nails in his wrists, and said in a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." Then he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. It was the most remarkable death I'd ever seen, and I'd seen many. I stood there looking at this man, and I was overwhelmed by a sense of fear. What had we done? I turned to my men and said to them, "Surely this man was innocent. He was, as he claimed, the Son of God." And for the first time in years, I wept.